Welcome to another episode of Two Old Geeks Talking. Now on the World Wide Web.
Hey, welcome back to Two Old Geeks Talking. I'm Rob.
I'm Trace.
And today we'll be discussing...
We'll be talking about the death of Star Trek.
What?
Yeah, and so originally I was just going to cover the 3 J.J. Abrams movies.
Okay.
And the reason I was going to do that is way back when we first started the channel, we did a 2-part series on Star Trek where we talked about Star Trek the original series, Star Trek the Next Generation, DS9, Voyager, and one of our subscribers, Carla,
Hey.
She suggested that she was like, hey, when are you guys going to cover the J.J. Abrams movies? And so I hadn't forgotten Carla. And so as I was prepping for this topic, I got inspired, I guess you could say. And so I kind of took it in a little different direction. So we're going to cover the movies, but we're also going to cover some other stuff as well. So you've heard the term patient zero?
Yeah, like in the zombie films and stuff.
Yeah. So to me, I mean, you have a viral outbreak, or you have a pandemic, and they try to find that patient zero for those that don't know, and try to find how he contracted it, how he or she contracted it, what their qualities was, where they were, and that kind of helps them create a vaccine or maybe even a cure, even during coronavirus.
So that's what you're going to do with this episode?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, even during coronavirus, the first person to contract it was a Chinese scientist at the Wuhan Coronavirus Institute. And so he would have been a patient zero. So I think that the downfall of Star Trek, which even led to the downfall of other IPs, all was because of this man. It's patient zero, J.J. Abrams. Now J.J. Abrams, he's got some talent.
Okay.
And I like him. And
He's made some money.
He went out to accomplish his goal, and he did. And what he wanted was he wanted to make a Star Trek, and his first movie came out in 2009, and is often referred to as Star Trek '09 by the fans. And he wanted to make a movie, but he didn't want to try to hold to canon, those old Star Trek episodes. And so what he did was he created an alternate timeline. And so that way he could have old characters with new twists.
So was he the first person to come up with a multiverse?
He's not the first to come up with a multiverse, but he's one of the first person that took a really popular IP and took it in a different direction.
Okay.
He's not the first, but one of the first. Certainly one of the most successful. So his timeline was called the Kelvin universe because the USS Kelvin was captained by George Kirk, James T. Kirk's father.
Okay.
And when it was destroyed, George Kirk died prematurely, and that sent young James T. Kirk on a different path. It also sent Starfleet on a different path. And so everything changed. It was like the butterfly effect, because of that one guy. And so you had an alternate timeline. So you had relationship swaps. You had now Kirk has a thing with Spock has a thing with Uhura, which he didn't in the original series.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got the Sulu character's gay in the movies, and he wasn't gay in the original series. In fact, it's odd ironic because George Takei played Sulu in the original series.
Right.
And George Takei is a gay man, and he didn't like the fact that they made Sulu gay in the new movies because he said, hey, that character's not gay. But something about George Kirk dying made Sulu turn gay and made Spock fall in love with Uhura. But anyway, so he made these movies, and what he was trying to do is Star Trek's had a loyal fan base. So Star Trek turns 60 years this year. I turned 60 this year. So Star Trek came out at the same time I came out.
Right.
And I've been a fan since we were boys. And so, but what JJ wanted to do, and he was successful, he didn't want to just pander to that small group of Star Trek fans. He wanted to bring in a wider audience.
Right. Okay.
And he did that. And so, but what he did was he kind of made a generic Star Trek movie with just the veneer of a generic sci-fi movie with just the veneer of Star Trek over
So
top of
he
it.
was telling his story, but using their IP to do it.
Absolutely. Old characters,
Okay.
new twist. And so everybody has a trademark at the end of our videos. We're like, we're done, you done, I'm done.
Right.
You know, so it's a little goofy thing we do. And we didn't plan it. It just worked out that way. And but for JJ, it was lens flare. You know what lens flare is?
Yeah, I do. I've seen the first one. I've seen the first Star Trek, and where you have all those like lights that just shoot out from nowhere.
You take the camera and you point it right at the stage lighting, and it creates a lens flare, and that's his signature. He had them all throughout the movie, But to me, that first movie, there wasn't any chemistry in between the characters because you had chemistry in the old characters, but these are new. And so you don't know what the relationships are because all the relationships have changed. But it was really Trek for the non-Trekker. But something horrible happened in that first movie. And what it was is it made money. They spent about $150 million on it,
Yeah, that's
and it
terrible.
made $585 million. So they more than tripled their money. And what they did was it validated them taking an old IP, old existing characters, and changing them for a new modern audience.
Oh, okay.
And so
you've seen it as a bad thing.
Yeah, I see it as a bad thing. I think that's patient zero. I think that bled over into Doctor Who, bled over into Lord of the Rings, bled over into The Witcher, all these series that don't go by the source material. They try to tell their own story using old characters. But because it made so much money for Paramount, of course, they're going to make another one. So in 2014, they come out with Star Trek Into Darkness. And in this movie, we had more lens flares, because, hey, JJ is involved.
Yeah.
He also added something called shaky cam. You know what shaky cam is?
Yeah, it's like where you're doing a handheld camera while you're running or something like that.
Yeah, it can actually cause motion sickness. Just imagine a cameraman on a trampoline having an epileptic seizure and trying to film a scene. So oftentimes it's used like in action movies when the stuntmen aren't on par or the actors aren't on par and you're trying to hide the action.
Right.
And so, I'm not a big fan of it, and it's kind of gone by the wayside now. But in the new Star Trek, and especially Star Trek Into Darkness, new Kirk in this new timeline had all these doubts, and he's a far departure from the original Kirk because William Shatner's Kirk just exuded confidence. I mean, he was confident with the women. His bridge crew believed in him when he had any kind of encounters with alien races. He did so with confidence, and and really that kind of defined that character. So
like the Kirk I knew, I'm not a Star Trek fan, but I knew that like Kirk was like the one person that went through what is it called, Starfleet, their academy kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like with flying colors, aced everything. Throughout the whole series, didn't they kind of like comment on, he was the one person that answered the unquestionable answer or something like that? I don't know. Yeah, but it always made him seem like, he was.
It was called the Kobarashi Maru.
Oh, okay. All right. It sounds like something Nike will have to get rid of.
Yeah. So they was also in the new movies they showed for the first time a breakdown in the chain of command, this disrespect. So the starships, the USS Starships was based on the Navy. I mean, it was, they basically show it's really a military organization,
Right.
Starfleet is.
Yeah.
Yes, they would say their primary goal is exploration, but they also have phasers and photon torpedoes.
Right.
And
they had the uniforms and the pips on their collars.
So anytime you have an organization, military organization, and you have that type of disrespect in the chain of command, things fall apart. So that was in the movie. I wasn't a fan of that. Spock was emotional in the J.J. Abrams movies, and when you go back to the original series, Spock character was half Vulcan, half human.
Right.
And so Leonard Nimoy did a fantastic job of, on occasion, letting emotions peek out. And so what would happen is you could tell he might crack a smile or he might show a little anger, but you could tell there was a constant battle going in trying to keep everything in check. So when he did slip up, it was just barely, and he brought it back under control.
You knew it was a pinnacle part of the story too, or something like that.
Spock in this one, Zachary Quintos or whatever his name is, he was just, that character was just overly emotional, loud, screaming, violent, and it's not the original Spock even. But I mean, it had highlights. Carl Urban, who I'm a huge fan of,
yeah.
he nailed the Dr. McCoy. I mean,
He nails
nailed
everything
it.
he
Yeah,
does, though.
he's such a good actor. Benedict Cumberbatch, he played Khan in Star Trek Into Darkness, and he's a fantastic actor. And now they totally redid the character Khan, and I didn't like the direction they took him in. But there again, they spent a little less money on the second movie and made and tripled their money again. So they've done rolled the dice twice and hit the jackpot twice.
Okay.
So they're on a roll. So obviously they're going to
Continue to make their money.
make it
Continue
so
to,
you got to have a trilogy. Anymore, you just seem like you got to have a trilogy. So they thought, you know what, we're going to put a little less money in the next one. So the next one came out in 2016. It was called Star Trek Beyond. It was made by a guy named Justin Lin. He made the Fast and Furious movies.
Okay.
And really, it was just a Fast and Furious movie. If you just took the cars out and put in spaceships, and you took the hot human chicks out and put in hot alien chicks, you know, that's pretty much what Star Trek Beyond was.
Okay.
It had a lot of humor in it, and because the Marvel Cinematic Universe had started adding humor to their movies, and they were having success with it. But that takes away from the drama. If you got a dramatic scene and people are cracking jokes in it, you can have humor in a movie and drama. It doesn't have to be one or the other. But when you're in a dramatic scene and somebody's cracking jokes, it kind of takes you out of it a little bit.
Yeah, that only works in like the movies like Bad Boys with Will Smith.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right. So
you have to shoot up, bang, bang, bang,
so
bang.
So this movie barely broke even, and so the studio couldn't decide whether they were going to make another one. J.J. Abrams rode off into the sunset to do the Star Wars franchise, and you know and some people would say that he ruined that as well, and certainly he played a part. But if I was to describe those three Star Trek movies made by J.J. Abrams in two words, I would call them Spock's helmet. And what I mean by that is if you go back into the 60s, right when Star Trek came out, actually before Star Trek came out, they had a toy for kids, and it was a white helmet that a kid wore on his head, and it had a red siren on top of it. And what a kid was supposed to do with that, I don't know. If he's supposed to run down the hall, pretend like he's an animal, if he's supposed to go in the bathroom, pretend like he's a fire truck, I'm not sure. But it was a thing. And so when Star Trek coming out, they didn't have any Star Trek merchandise, and so they wanted some. So they just took some existing toys. So they took that helmet and just wrote Spock across the top of it. And so they said, "This is Spock's helmet," and they released it. And so to me, that's what those J.J. Abrams movies are. They're just action movies with Star Trek stamped on the outside of them, and it's not really Trek in my opinion. So they just recently announced this year that they're not going to do any more J.J. Abrams movies. Of course, it's been 10 years since the last one, so I knew that wasn't going to happen.
Right.
But yes, they're like, no, the J.J. Abrams universe is dead. So that's the end of those movies. So let's talk about the death of Star Trek. Because they were semi-successful, and they were successful in a way that they didn't have to follow what had come before, and they were trying to bring in a wider audience. J.J. vouched for somebody that had worked with him on those movies and helped him along, a gentleman named Alex Kurtzman.
Okay.
So in 2017, CBS All Access turns into Paramount Plus, and they're wanting to have some original shows on their streaming service.
Right.
And so they're like, okay, we're going to make some new Star Trek series. So the first one was Discovery. And it was horrible. It was just totally off from what Star Trek is. Let me give you an example. I'm going to show you a clip. So in this clip, you're going to see scenes from Next Generation. You're going to see scenes from Star Trek Discovery. What's happened in the Next Generation clip is that there's a gentleman named Lieutenant Barclay who's in Starfleet. He's on the flagship, the USS Enterprise. And he's antisocial. He's awkward. We all know people like that.
Right.
And so he's having a hard time making friends, fitting in. and some of the crew comes to the captain and complains about him. He sets them straight and he gives them some wisdom. And it's just like, look, this is what you need to do to rectify this situation. Versus something similar that happened in Discovery and how they handled it.
Material. And I assume by your request for his transfer that you think he's not, Commander.
There's every indication that he served competently in Starfleet for years.
I've examined Barclay's psychological profile. He has a history of seclusive tendencies.
And yet he chose this way of life. He had made the same commitment to Starfleet that we all have. It's easy to transfer a problem to someone else. Too easy. He's a member of your team. Try to find some way to help him to make a positive contribution. Get to know the man better.
I just don't think you're the right fit for the kind of work we're doing here, so I've requested to have you transferred.
Captain, but...
This conversation's over. You're dismissed.
Right, but...
This is the end of the conversation.
Captain, if I could...
You can't.
Right, but this has...
The conversation's over. That's the end.
Well, technically, the conversation is not over because I could keep talking, and then the conversation is
I don't know how you made it this far in your career behaving like this. This is why I ended the conversation. I'm having you transferred. End of conversation.
It would be rude and irresponsible to end a conversation.
The conversation's over.
But...
Edward.
Remember earlier I said...
Larkin.
Yep.
There's a transport coming in 2 days, and you're going to be on it.
It's easy to transfer a problem to someone else.
Message my bosses and told them I was done.
I made one of the most important scientific discoveries of our time. I'm not the dumb one.
Curious. The captain is usually the last to leave.
One crew member was tragically lost. How do you explain that?
He was an idiot.
Try harder, Geordie. He's a member of your team. Try to find some way to help him to make a positive contribution. Get to know the man better.
Glad you were with us out here in the real world today, Mr. Barclay. Good job, Red. And only, 6 weeks for the lessons?
Good job, period.
We have a patient teacher.
You've come a long way, Reg. It takes a great deal of courage to put yourself on display like that. There was a time when nothing could have dragged you onto a stage in front of an audience. You've made tremendous progress. Look at yourself now. Look at all the other people you're with. You're not just acting, you're interacting.
So I've requested to have you transferred.
Captain, but...
This conversation's over. You're dismissed.
Right, but...
This is the end of the conversation. He was an idiot.
So to me, that's the big difference. Star Trek Discovery fell flat, and Alex Kurtzman went on to do Star Trek Picard season 1 and 2. 1 was okay to me. 2, I couldn't get past 1 or 2 episodes before I bailed on it. They actually took the 3rd season, gave it to somebody else, and they did a fantastic job. He come out with a Star Trek movie called Section 31. It was panned by critics. Nobody liked it. I mean, I think it got like a 13% on Rotten Tomatoes. They come out with a Starfleet Academy, and that's what's playing now. Starfleet Academy season 1 just wrapped up, and they put the first episode on YouTube.
Okay.
And trying to build momentum for the new show.
Gotcha.
So you can watch the first episode for free. And there's a gentleman named Gary who has a YouTube channel that's called Neurotic, and he took his Spock action figure and just set it on a chair.
Like his Mego or something?
Yeah, and I think it was a sideshow. It was like one of the expensive ones. But it was just sitting on a chair, and he did a live stream with just that action figure. Nobody saying nothing, nobody in the background, just that action figure. And he did it at the same time that Star Trek Discovery Star Trek Starfleet Academy was on, and he got like 4 times the views on that action figure than the new show did. It was ridiculous. But the thing about Kurtzman Trek is it's just dark. It's violent. A lot of F-bombs, a lot of identity politics. A lot of them are supposed to be prequels, but they have like really hard to believe technology because the technology is so advanced, and yet it's supposed to be before Kirk. They've got...
they needed a Spock helmet.
Yes, and your Spock helmet. Yeah. So, you know, the uniforms are different, the ships are different, the aliens are different, and yet it's supposed to be set in the same universe as, you know, Next Generation, DS9, Voyager, and all of those. And so they have. But one thing I will say about Kurtzman that I'll give him a compliment about.
Okay.
Is that before he came out with the first show, he said, you know, I'm not a big fan of Star Trek. I honestly don't care about Star Trek. What I'm going to do with these shows, I'm going to use it as a podium to talk about my political and my social concerns and views and use it as a platform to kind of get the message across.
Oh, so he just came out and just was like,
yeah,
owned up to it right away.
Yes, he did exactly what he said he was going to do. I mean, the Starfleet Academy has the first openly gay Klingon named Jaden, and he wears he prances around in a dress, and I mean, it's ridiculous. And the thing is, there's nothing.
He's a warrior in a dress.
Yes, he's something like that. So, but the thing is there's nothing wrong with diversity. Okay. The original show had diversity. You had her African woman. You had Montgomery Scotsman. You had Sulu, who was Japanese. You had Chekhov, who was Russian, and you know when that was going on, that's during the Cold War. You had all these different races and all these different nationalities, but that was never a plot point.
Right.
It was never even brought up. You know, it wasn't an issue. And to me, that's when you're going to defeat racism, is when you don't bring it up, when you're not talking about it. You know, when you know, I mean, as long as you're talking about it, as long as you're showing that division, it's always going to be an issue. Whenever race has as little to do about a person as their height or their weight, that's when you defeated racism.
Right.
In our generation, Generation X, you know.
Yeah, we had almost. What I would have thought was, when I was a young man in high school, we're talking about 80s, like racism had almost gone the way of the dodo.
I mean, pretty much non-existent.
And it reared its head. It didn't really rear its head as much as people used it as a tool. Politicians used it to divide Americans. Different groups used it to move ahead and push other ones behind, which is what racism is. So, yeah, at one point in my life, we all lived together in peace. It was all good.
There was no, you see a lot of...
And we're raised up in the South.
Yeah. And the thing is, you know, you also see a lot of men dumb, women smart. You see a lot of feminism in these new shows as well. And if you have to dumb down the guys to make your female characters good, that's not good. I mean, you want everybody equal, you know. So, but anyway, it's really, really bad. In the last 10 years, there's always been a new Star Trek project going on. And now, for the first time in a decade, there's no new Star Trek planned. Some people say, you know, a lot of people say it's a dead brand. Star Trek's dead. You know, I hold hope. I think Gene Roddenberry's original vision, and I know Gene Roddenberry had his issues, and if you watch our original 2 videos, Rob points every one of them out because he's not a Star Trek fan.
Nope.
But his vision was optimistic. It was optimistic, and what he saw was people getting better as time went on. And so when you watch those original Star Trek, you know, they would go to an alien race and they had problems.
Right.
And the people on the ship, the Starfleet, would help them with their problems. But Starfleet itself didn't have problems. They had defeated racism, they defeated sexism, they defeated hunger and greed and all that. So man had elevated himself. And that's the way Roddenberry saw us going. But yet when you watch the NuTrek,
they were
terrible.
what we hope intelligent life form will be like when they come across us.
Yeah. So I mean, so I still hold hope. I'm going to show a little clip, and it's from Patrick Stewart. He's doing the talking. He played Captain Picard, and he's talking about they're at a dedication ceremony where at Paramount Studios they had dedicated a building over to Gene Roddenberry.
Okay.
And so Gene's actually in. He was still alive, and he was there. And Patrick gets up and reads about a letter that was written in about a policeman, about what Star Trek meant to him. And so I'll play that now.
A building to be remembered by. He is remembered in the hearts and minds of so many, many millions of people. And out of those millions, I want to just pluck one particular individual. A man who first wrote to me in the second season. He told me that he was a sergeant in the Las Vegas Police Department. Since then, he's written to me several times telling me about his life. But in that first letter, Gene, he said that at the end of certain days, when he was saddened and disillusioned and desperate by the mankind and the womankind that he had seen passing before his gaze in that city, feeling that all of his energies and the energies of the rest of the world were to no avail because we were spiraling downhill, he would go home in the evening. He would take down some tapes of Star Trek and Star Trek The Next Generation. He would put them in his video, and he would have his faith restored. One man's life that you have affected, as you have affected all of ours. Congratulations.
So anyway, that's that type of optimism is what we need in NuTrek going back. Now Skydance has recently purchased Paramount.
Okay.
Paramount is in the process of purchasing Warner Brothers.
Right.
And so Netflix was going to get them, and so Netflix bowed out.
Huh.
And so the next highest bidder is Paramount. And so it looks like Batman and all those characters coming. I hope they do continue with Trek, and I hope they get rid of Kurtzman. And I do believe they're getting rid of him. I think he knows they're getting rid of him. The Star Trek Starfleet Academy, it was actually $10 million an episode. And you can't tell me they spent $10 million an episode.
Well, you know how much they pay them actors nowadays.
I suspect, I don't know, but I suspect that there's kickbacks, on the CGI props, this and that and the other, and somebody's padding their pocket. They made season 1 and 2 at the same time. I have heard they're not even going to show season 2. They're going to use it as a tax write-off, and Kurtzman's gone. But I hope they get somebody in there like Terry Matalas, who did the third season of Picard, who knows and loves Star Trek, and is not using it as a podium, and knows how to make a good show. They made a show for an audience that doesn't exist. If I was in the minority and there was a lot of people that disagree with me, those shows would be successful, and Alex Kurtzman would be held as a fantastic writer and producer. But that's not the case.
We are in a minority. We're old geeks.
We're old geeks.
There's not too many old geeks left.
No,
they're all
there's
young
not.
geeks.
But I feel sorry for somebody young that watches Star Trek, and that's all the Star Trek they watch, and they think that's
all they know of Star Trek.
Yeah, or Doctor Who. But I think that JJ set the precedent on, taking an existing IP and changing it to tell your story the way you want, and I think that's hurt a lot of different brands. And so, hopefully, Star Trek isn't dead. But that's my thoughts. You got anything else?
I want a Spock helmet.
You want a Spock helmet?
I need a Spock helmet in my life.
All right. Well, I'll see what I can find on eBay. All right. Appreciate you watching. Hit that like button, that subscribe button, and that notification bell. And stay geeky, my friends. So, you done?
I'm done.
We're done.
We're done.
We are done. I think we're done.
Poke me with a fork.
I hope we're done this time.
Not this time.